What's going on, Canucks fans? Back here for another episode of the Canucks Conversation live. Catch us on YouTube Monday to Fridays, 1 o'clock. Normally David Quadrelli in studio, but he's lost his voice from screaming so much yesterday. Just kidding. Our typical Friday guys back here. Harm and Dial here, brought to you by the great folks over at Zephyr Epic. And I got to say, those Zephyr Epic folks, they're getting a full scoop of Faber tomorrow, you could say. I'm rolling into Zephyr Epic tomorrow, 2 o'clock. If you're in the Surrey area, come by. I'm opening up a box of hockey cards with them. They're going to film some content. I'm going to be there from like 2 to 3, 2 to 4. If anybody comes, I'll stay. But 2 o'clock, come up to Zephyr Epic down there in Surrey. Going to film some content for them. And it's going to be a good overall time. And then the other cool thing Zephyr Epic's doing, you and I will get to do this off the top of the show every Friday. They're going to give us a few boxes of cards. So we'll open up some stuff, like maybe every show or whatever. We do a couple packs, see if we can get some pulls. Yeah. So I'm excited for that. Before we get to Harm and Dial, who's brought to you by the great folks at Zephyr Epic. So I got to let you open some of those cards. We do want to mention, brought to you by the great folks at Montana's and their daily deals, their comfort menu. So much going on at Montana's. Monday is half price wings. Tuesday, you can go get that taco for $5. The thing's massive. Frank Zaravali says he can eat 2. I still waiting for the day when I can see it. All you can eat ribs on Wednesday. One of our friends in the chat said that somebody ate 13 full racks of ribs. 13 on the Wednesday, all you can eat. It's wild. But I do want to bring something up with you, Harm, in Montana's, as I'm joined by Harm and Dial here from The Athletic. Excited to get you back here on a Friday. Harm, we've calmed down. Yesterday's show was a little tense. I've calmed down. Quads isn't here. He was not calm either. But I want to pull this up here because I need you to give me your answer. Not that one.
I've seen that graphic before. You told me this is a new and exciting one.
I know that you're a picky eater.
Okay.
A picky eater on the show. And something that I thought I'd bring up was the Montana's kids menu to see which one you would go with. Not because you're young. Now I was going to do this to Quads, and then I said, you know what? Instead, because you're a picky eater, I wanted to see which way, because I was thinking, I was like, this is your ballpark right here for the food that you would get out to eat. So which one pops off from the Montana's kids menu?
This is a tough one. I'd say got to be the classic chicken fingers and fries.
Chicken fingers and fries. Okay.
You can never go wrong. Is there a difference between fingers and tenders, by the way?
I don't think so. I think it's just a name. I stand to be corrected. And the best thing about going on YouTube is literally being corrected by people on things like this.
I don't know. So. I've heard anytime I order chicken tenders and fries, they taste amazing.
So the tender is a different part. Like when you cut the chicken breast, right? You got the big chicken breast, then you have the tender. I know you cut the tender off. So maybe chicken fingers are just like a chicken breast cut into those sizes.
I have no idea.
And then the tender might just actually be the tender. So
whatever it is, I remember at Young Stars when our pal Jonathan Wall hooked us up there.
Yeah, we had a lot of chicken fingers.
Oh my god, I ordered 2 of them.
Yeah, that was good. That was a great
bulking season.
It was. Well, I was wondering if you might go with the ooey gooey grilled cheese though, or the Scooby Doo noodles.
No, I'm not a big grilled cheese guy.
Okay, I went out when we were at Abbotsford training camp, or Abbotsford hosted Vancouver Canucks training camp. We were out there. You were with me.
Yeah.
And J-Pat ordered a grilled cheese. A grown man ordered a grilled cheese out there for dinner.
Wow, I don't remember that.
Was wild. We were at that little, I forget what it was. There was lights hanging down everywhere. And it was just like a brewery. But I remember we all got charcuterie.
Oh, I remember that place. J-Pat, I don't know what it's called.
Grilled cheese. I don't know if I'd get a grilled cheese going out for dinner. I feel like that's the thing you can make at home and make pretty good at home.
Yeah.
Like I don't care how good it's going to be at a restaurant. I'm not going to get a grilled cheese. Hey, let's start with Kuzmenko. Let's dive into it, okay? Because we didn't get a chance to hear from you yesterday. Obviously, Quads and I had a lot of thoughts on the situation. I think the overall thing that we talked about was, and I think we actually even referenced your tweet, was good contract, bad timing for this team.
Yeah.
I'll kind of just open up the floor to your initial thoughts. I know you guys did a van cast yesterday, but you said it was like right after. Didn't really get much time to kind of let it seep in and kind of really think about this contract here. For those who don't know, Andrei Kuzmenko signed a 2-year extension with the Vancouver Canucks. Average annual value of $5.5 million. It kicks in next season, obviously. He's making the ELC minimum right now with the Vancouver Canucks on this season. But next year, he's going to be a guy making $5.5 million. Talked about it a little bit today when we got a chance to chat with him. Your initial thoughts on this 2-year deal for Andrei Kuzmenko?
Yeah, it was less expensive than I thought it'd be, both on AAV and term. That's why I called it a good contract. But doesn't make sense for the timing of where this team's at. I don't know what they're gonna achieve within the next 2 years as a franchise, as a club, that would exceed the value that he could have netted for you at the trade deadline. I wrote about this in my article. There are only 8 teams currently with $2 million or more in cap space, and most of those teams are bottom feeders. Wow. So that means most cup contenders who are looking to add at the trade deadline are pressed right up against the salary cap, and you consider the unique proposition of Kuzmenko, the year that he's had, already 21 goals, 43 points, 47 games. Add on top of that, that any team in the league could afford that salary and that he could give you an instant boost for teams that don't have the cap space to go after a Patrick Kane, a Vladimir Tarasenko, a Timo Meier. Kuzmenko would have been the perfect fit. Not to mention, there are a lot of teams that are looking for top 6 help, especially on the wings right now, when you look all around the National Hockey League. So I think his trade value would have been strong. I think my expectation would have been that you can at least get a first-round pick, just even after you consider the fact that he has a limited NHL sample size. We don't know what he's done in the playoffs yet. Even with those caveats, it's just his ELC makes him such a unique player to fit in that, especially when you consider this Canucks team, they've drafted once in the first round the last 3 years. My colleague Scott Wheeler at The Athletic ranked the Canucks ranked every NHL team's prospect pool. He's doing that right now in January. Canucks are 28th in the league. The only teams lower than them, Colorado, Boston, Tampa, Pittsburgh, and I think that's 4, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there. All teams that have won the Cup since 2010 and have been perennial contenders year in, year out. So you look at how desperately this Canucks team needs to build for the future. You consider that once you move beyond Horvat and Chen, you don't have many trade chips unless you're like really digging into the Hughes, Demko sort of tier, which I don't know if this franchise will want to get into if they're considering a retool. I just felt that they needed to do that, especially because you also then open up that cap space.
That's what we said yesterday. It could be, if you spun this the right way and you look at this and you want to be as negative as possible, you could say like the Canucks just lost out on 2 first-round picks. If they would have played their cards in the most correct way and just eaten some of it, you talked about how many contending teams are right up against the salary cap. Listen, contracts are going to expire at the end of this year on a lot of players, but there's still going to be a lot of teams who have a lot of bad money. This is the NHL. This is 2023, man. Like, the cap isn't going up that $10 million for next season.
Teams oftentimes have to pay a premium to get a third-party broker, even at past trade deadlines, so that they can get extra attention.
Right.
If you're the Canucks, all that extra value is going directly into your pocket. Not to mention, again, you have a situation like I've consistently brought up this Montreal example, where they traded Tyler Toffoli, they acquired a first-round pick from the Flames, then they used that cap space in the offseason, went back to the Calgary Flames, and said, okay, we'll take on Monahan's contract for 1 year at $6 million. Give us another first-round pick. Now Monahan's having a good season. He's going to be one of the most attractive secondary market pieces at the deadline. There's been so much talk. Pierre LeBrun has mentioned about, could the Avs go after Monahan instead of Horvat because he'll be a lot cheaper to acquire? So now they'll get another 1 or 2 assets. He's not going to get another first round pick, but from that one decision to trade Toffoli, they got that return, and then they'll get a multitude of other assets
because it was done correctly.
Because it was done correctly,
and it's showing you that that's the thing with Montreal, and we talked about it. Like, yeah, they flipped Toffoli for the picks, ended up also flipping some picks for Kirby Dach. Like, that's more of a retool than I think. Like, I even think when you're talking about a retool, this thought of players between 23 and 26, like, that's not a retool. That's just being a good GM. Like, finding players that haven't, like, that's the thing that we've heard from Rutherford. It's like, well, we're trying to find players that haven't had success on their ELCs. It's like, yeah, but
that's a supplementary tool.
Yeah, and so are the Avalanche, so are the Bruins. These teams are going out there and be like, oh, like, he's at the end, and they didn't want to sign their RFA player. Well, we would like to maybe give a shot to, think of Duclair and how he's had such a bounce back, and just players in that situation where it's like, I don't think that should be your process of a retool. Your retool should even be, trade, and not even trading picks necessarily, but getting to the point where you can get a Kirby Dach, where you can go make that trade for that player who's going to be a huge piece of your team moving forward. We talked about Kotkaniemi last week. Like, maybe that's a type of player you want to look for a retool. To me, that's more of like a retool. You shouldn't, even in a retool, you shouldn't be like going above players that are over 24. Like, anybody over 24, that shouldn't be in a retool. We've heard 26 and under be the number, but that's not what that is. When you're going for players 25, 26 years older than that, you're trying to be competitive. Yeah. You're not retooling anything. You're doing the same thing that Patrick Allvin told us earlier in the year, where they just want to build and build and build. And then 2 weeks later, we hear, no, we're going to retool. But they're not taking a step back if you're going out and trying to get 25-year-old players and signing a guy like Kuzmenko. It's not a retool move. And I made the joke yesterday on Twitter, like, they said they were going for 26 and under players, but Kuzmenko turns 27 next week. So they had to get this deal done yesterday because he turns 27 next week and he wouldn't have fit with their plan.
The other point, which I think is really important, is for a retool to work, to turn things around quickly, what are you going to need to do from this point on? Well, you're going to have to replace Bo Horvat, meaning you need to find another top 6 centerman, which that's as difficult as it is to find top pair right-handed defensemen.
Yeah.
So you need to do that, and then you need like 3 more top 4 defensemen because you have 0 top 4D outside of Quinn Hughes. Legit, on a good team, top 4D. Right? Yeah. Ethan Bear, I like him as a player. On a good team, he's a 5. Right?
He couldn't crack Carolina's lineup. Like, Jalen Chatfield was playing over him.
Yeah, I think that was the stylistic difference.
For sure.
Fitting, but
still, if you're that good,
Bear's a 5 on a good team.
Yeah,
I still agree that he should be part of this team's future. Luke Shen, he's at best a 5 on a good team. Mm-hmm. He's a 5-6.
Yeah.
So now you have projected going into the offseason about $9 million in space to address all of those needs, to chip away at that.
We did this yesterday. We calculated, okay, if you take Pearson and you take Poolman, you put them on LTI, and you're looking right now for next season, you're looking at about 14 roster spots filled with about $13 million of space. So we just, like what we were saying yesterday is, hey, you know how much you're paying Riley Stillman? You are about to start getting lower quality guys than Riley Stillman to play in your top 4. You're about to start getting, we joked about it yesterday, but like John Stevens coming up from the A, he's got a 2-way deal. He can come up and play in the A. Like, you're going to need guys that are making $800,000 just to fill your roster.
It's not even necessarily that. What they're then going to have to do is go the buyouts route if they're unable to successfully trade Besser or Garland. So that immediately becomes a top priority. Mm-hmm. Is we've got to find a way even more. It was already important, but now you have to find a way to rebuild Garland and Besser's value and figure out a way, because otherwise you have way too much capital tied up on the wings. The other point I want to sort of debunk here, which it sounds great in theory, the notion that re-signing Kuzmenko helps you keep Peterson long term. I don't buy that at all.
I really don't buy it.
And I'm not saying this from a perspective of, I think Peterson's going to leave. I just think that, put yourself in the situation. You're Elias Patterson, franchise center. You're making a decision for your entire prime, your next contract to maximize the value, probably going to be 8 years. Mm-hmm. This is where you're setting your roots down. These aren't just the best years of your career. These are the best years of your life in general. To be a star player in the NHL. So this is a really big picture, long-term decision, a commitment of nearly a decade. Kuzmenko's extension has only 1 year of overlap with whatever next contract Peterson signs.
And that's the thing. We touched on this right before we went to air. If they do have a ton of success together, and say Kuzmenko hits 40 goals next year when he's got all, and this is like the high end happens. Say he gets 40 goals and him and Peterson are just great at 5-on-5 and Peterson keeps finding him on the power play. You think the Canucks are going to be able to sign Elias Patterson at, let's say, $11 million, just to throw a number out there, at $11 million on his next deal? Are they going to have another $9 million laying around to sign Kuzmenko after you potentially bought out OEL, bought out Connor Garland? Like, these type of things, like, the plan, this is what I think we were struggling with yesterday. And I want to keep calm and do this like in a intellectual way and just talk my way through it calmly. But like, I don't see because like the retool thing to me, like I'm starting to really think that like if you are retooling, you shouldn't be getting anybody over the age of 24. I know that's not what they said, and that's not what the general manager or the president said. But even with that situation, these type of players just don't seem to add up. And this 2-year deal, like it's great. I think a lot of teams are going to find if Kuzmenko has 2 more years of success from this date forward, has 2 more years of being very successful with the Vancouver Canucks, somebody would like to make a trade for him at the deadline. But do I think it's more than it would have been this year?
No chance.
I don't think so. And people will I've seen this argument out there of like, yeah, but he hasn't proven it at the NHL for long enough. He doesn't have any, Frank was on the show on Monday and he's like, yeah, but he hasn't done it at the NHL level. He hasn't had playoff success in the NHL. Sure, that's all not ideal. You'd like to see a guy who dominates in the playoffs at the NHL level, but I'll tell you what he does have: a cap hit under $1 million, so that you can actually make the trade instead of just being interested in that type of player. He's actually a guy that every team going into the playoffs right now, if they move a little tiny bit of money, not a lot, just a tiny bit of money, make that little space for a guy who's making that much money, under $1 million, anybody could have taken Kuzmenko on a deal. You won't see that in 2 years if you want to start to talk about at the end of this contract, we're not going to be able to sign this huge extension for him. We have to trade him. The value is not going to be the same. It might be a first-round pick.
12-team no trade list as well. So more than a third of the league is out of the equation right there.
Yeah, and I think you might have said this yesterday with how agents are able to manipulate things.
They can. It depends,
right? It would be interesting, like if Milstein doesn't want his client to go anywhere from Vancouver, with a 12-team no trade list, you can make it pretty damn tough. Because what did you say? How many teams have $2 million in cap space? You said 8 or 6 teams. You said
they're 8 right now, according to cap friendly.
So if you cut out 12, like
also, well, it depends, right? Because you, as an agent in that situation, you got to talk to your client
for sure
and sort out what's your top priority. Because obviously, a lot of times when guys have no trade lists, they'll have the worst teams in the league, right? In that equation, right? They don't want to go to Arizona, Columbus, whatever. But if you're a rental at the deadline, you may be thinking, like, let's say in 2 years' time, you may be thinking these bottom feeders, like what bottom feeder is going to trade for rental. So you may not have to include those teams on your list anyway. Mm-hmm. You might not you might go Arizona, nope. Philly, nope. They're not going to be interested. Columbus, nope. I don't even have to put these teams on my no trade list. And then if I don't want to move,
combine that with the teams that are capped out, not be able to make a move. Then you can start
putting your contenders on there if you really don't want to be moved.
Yeah.
So the Canucks are giving up a lot of control, and I mean, I don't just want it's tough because he's so wholesome and we love rooting for him. We wish him the best. He's so from our perspective, it's great, right? It's like another fun guy in the locker room to always talk to.
It is going to brighten our day a lot over the next 2 years, right?
It also is good from the perspective of, I think part of the win too is the organization's a dumpster fire right now.
Right.
At least this guy wanted to stay and at a reasonable rate. The idea that, okay, he wants to be part of this process, that's a good thing, but I would still rather have another first-round pick.
Yeah, and I just think the combination of, and I don't know if I've gotten your thoughts on this, but I think the way you just said it there was like, listen, I think Kuzmenko would have got a first-round pick.
I think so too. Yeah.
I think he would have got a first and more. And on top of that, you would have had this now flexibility that you have with the 5.5. If the Canucks weren't to say just, if they couldn't sign Kuzmenko, they'll go chase Horvat on the extension. Like, let's just say they didn't do any of that. You have that 5.5 extra next year to really be flexible with. It just, to me, cap space is absolutely king.
Because I'll give you an example. When John Marino is suddenly available on the trade block, 25-year-old right shot D, top 4 legit, can move the puck, play reliably in his own end, tall, lanky. When he's out on the trade block for a very reasonable price,
right,
and you don't have the cap space to go acquire him, what good is it? You can be interested all you want. If you're going out and spending that cap space elsewhere on a winger like Ilya Mikheyev, you don't have the room to get the deal done. And again, this isn't to just I'm not trying to totally dump on management. A big part of the problem of the lack of flexibility is that Jim Benning left them a mess.
For sure.
But it just means that you just got to be so careful with how you commit your dollars, because you want to make sure you have the flexibility to, when the future opportunities come up in the offseason to acquire defenders because many of them don't come up. But when the rare opportunity does present itself, you want to be able to actually pounce on it right away.
Yeah. No, and just from some of the moves we've seen, like I tweeted this one out yesterday too. The Canucks could end up spending a total of over $100 million if JT Miller can't be a center and is a winger long term. Which, listen, we've seen him play both. He's better as a winger. I think that's pretty clear. And if he has to be a winger on this team moving forward, the 4 big contracts that Patrick Alvin, as the general manager, has signed are all wingers that'll total over $100 million. That's wild to say.
It just runs contrary to the way the rest of the league is operating.
But it's what you said about like cleaning up the mess before. It feels like what it feels like to me is like, I remember when I was a kid, certain families had plastic wrap over their couches.
Oh yeah.
It's like the Canucks came in and saw this dirty couch, and instead of cleaning it and putting the plastic wrap on, they just threw the plastic wrap over the dirty couch. So it still is like a dirty situation here because they're not taking steps to clean things up. They're just like, oh no, but now it's like clean-ish. Like the plastic's over. Like you can't see the blood stain here and the dog that crapped in the corner and the piss there. Like it's to me, it's just they aren't doing enough to clean up the mess. But when you sign JT Miller, when you lose the flexibility with this money with Andrei Kuzmenko, it feels like there's not enough actually being done to the problems that they addressed to us. In the first media availability that we had with this new management group was like, it's going to be hard work. They said it. I don't think I've seen enough hard work and tough decisions when it just feels like a lot of this stuff is, and I think I've heard this sentiment from a lot of Canucks fans, people online, everywhere around, people that you talk to on the street, us in the media. We've talked about this with a lot of different folks. It just, you're starting to see shades of the Benning regime with a lot of these decisions. The JT Miller was the big one. That I saw somebody in the chat just mentioning that buy out Miller. Like it's great. Like we're at that. Like it's giving me worry.
50 Shades of Benning.
Yeah, 50 Shades of Jim. It's just, I mean, I said it on the show yesterday, and I'll say it again. Like I really just hope that everything that we talk about on this show or we write about it, The Athletic or Canucks Army, and everything, I really hope we're just idiots and we're so wrong. I don't know. Like we said, like, how much more fun would it be if for everybody in the I'd love to come in here on the chat and talk about how cool, like how the defense is moving the puck well, how there's some prospects in the system to be excited about. Instead I have to come in here and tell you like Jacob Truscott might be signing at the end of the year. He looks like an AHLer. Like there could be a road where they can actually go down that way, and it's just I'm trying to stay calm with it. It's just I really hope that we are stupid and wrong, because these guys are in a position that they can't be stupid and wrong. They're general managers and presidents and like they have to be right, man, with a lot of decisions.
You know, 2 steps for management to rebuild their confidence within the fan base. You know how they can win over all Canucks fans again?
More Kuzmenko content.
That helps. Step 1, get a massive haul for Horvat, which isn't going to be easy because there are complications around the extension or whatever. And then second, find a way to get rid of the Miller contract before the no trade kicks in.
Wow. If
you can do that, then I think we'll see a lot of people, including us, instead of preemptively dumping on how challenging this is going to be, then we're going, all right, retool's still going to be difficult.
Sure.
But I'm willing to buy that you're not totally out of lunch.
And I think that it makes it hard because like we've seen the way this team has operated for years. This organization has operated for years. If you were just put on this planet today and told you're a Canucks fan, follow this team, and you like tuned into the show yesterday and you heard how mad we were about this player that everybody loves, you'd be like, what's wrong with these guys? Like this seems cool. This is great. Like, but it's like we've seen this, how things play out when you don't take the steps that you just mentioned, the actual hard steps and the hard things to do to get to that point. It's because we've seen how things play out. So like that's what makes it difficult for me to kind of like believe that they
need to pull a rabbit out of the hat with this Horvat deal, man. They cannot, like, if they make a deal with a team like Boston, they cannot bring back someone like Brandon Carlo as the centerpiece of a package and go, this is it, guys. This is our massive haul. We got to write D. 25, 26 years old.
Right.
Like that's not going to win. That's not going to get it done. Pick up a stud blue chip like the bar's not even that high. Just a real stud blue chip prospect as part of a package. You don't need a guy that's NHL ready right now.
No, I said this yesterday. I'd love to hear your thought. Like what I said on the show yesterday was Canucks fans, unfortunately, are never going to know what it's like to be in a position where they have a prospect that's desirable to other teams. Like think about Scott Morrow, like the right D out of Carolina that everyone wants. Drew Hellison was traded last trade deadline from the Colorado Avalanche. Brock Faber,
or Justin Barron.
Justin Barron. Like I said, Brock Faber, who was just traded for Kevin Fiala. Those are all defense prospects, right D defense prospects. Who? How many games in the NHL have they played? At the time that Drew Hellison was traded, none. How many games has Scotty Morrow played? None. How many games has Brock Faber played? None. They're just right D prospects who were picked in the first 50 picks. There's so much value in that because of the position. And like they haven't touched the NHL, but the value that they have helps you get a Kevin Fiala, helps you add massively to what your team can do. And Canucks fans, unfortunately, because I saw the argument of like, yeah, but Kuzmenko, if he gets you a late first, is that late first going to score 30 goals? No, he might, but like, it's not about that. It's about how value is perceived in the NHL. And the Canucks have ostracized themselves from putting themselves into a situation of being able to add these high value prospects with how the previous years have been handled. Obviously, that leads them up to this point of not having a good prospect pool. But they've also set themselves up now, like trading a second round pick with Jason Dickinson to get rid of him. You just lost a potential Brock Faber right there, or a potential Scotty Morrow there, who's the main piece I look at from Carolina is like Nikas, how you say
Necas.
I'm not even close. He's like a main piece that people look at in the trade. But the other name that gets mentioned, if you want to go the younger route,
they're not going to give him Necas though.
Exactly. Like they won't. So who are you getting? Scotty Morrow, probably, like the right D prospect. The Canucks couldn't be involved if they were on the other side. Say they were really good next year. What are they going to trade? Lekkerimäki to get better? Like if they're a team that's, for some reason, the Canucks are just the best team in the Pacific at the deadline. What do they have to move to a team to add? They wouldn't have anything.
Well, that's where the logic of
Lekkerimäki was in a game where they won 7-0 to Daniel Svensson. He had one secondary assist. He was on the top line. Like,
yeah. Well, it's also why the idea that you like, oh, a late first not going to turn into a player like Kuzmenko. I mean, yeah, but like when the Canucks are a winning team, like, which I don't know when that's going to be, but it's not going to be during Kuzmenko's prime. It's just like the same conversation we had with JT Miller when everybody, like not everybody, but a large segment of the fan base was down with re-signing him, was saying like, oh, whatever pieces you get back in the Miller trade, you're not going to find another
99-point guy.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, you're probably right, but it doesn't matter when you're opening up all that cap flexibility and when that 99-point player isn't going to help you win in the playoffs anyway because your team is not in a position to take advantage of that player.
I want to bring our producer, who I didn't mention it, by the way, Alex Lard, is going to hop in. I forgot to mention our producer, Alex, does an incredible job. He was, we're on time. Thank you, Alex, for that. But Alex, if you want to hop in here, Alex is a Sens fan who we've talked about in the past. I'm just curious, like, to what I want to know, because the Sens obviously went into a rebuild, added a lot of prospects. And listen, some of those prospects haven't worked out as much as you've hoped, but at least Alex
they drafted poorly too, man.
Alex, as a Sens fan, like, what was the thought process when the team actually went into rebuild after being not good for a long time? When the Carlson trade happened, when you start to see players go away, like, how on board was the Sens fan base at the time?
Well, with the Carlson trade, not everyone, I would say, wasn't too on board with it, but after a while, you start getting excited about the young guys, and everyone feels a lot more optimistic, and I would say that's what happened in Ottawa. The teardown, it could be fun, but when you're trading away someone like Carlson, it wasn't that much fun. For you guys trading away some of your pieces, I would say it would be fun, and then to see what you would get back and how optimistic you could be about your future based on what you've gotten back. That's a lot of fun, that part. And then when
Right.
if it doesn't work out, then that's kind of where you're in with like the Leafs in the last couple of years, where they're kind of, you need to get over the hump, and that's really hard, but that's fun. Like what you were saying earlier, that's what you want to be talking about. You want to be talking about who's playing, the left wing on your fourth line and is that key penalty killer.
Yeah. Players that, because that's the other thing that, and we'll transition here to the talk a little bit, because I think this is something that we're going to find out. But that's kind of what I wanted to hear, was like players that, like Alex mentioned, they're guys that you see on the fourth line that are making an impact. I think that's something we're going to see over the rest of the season. Does Dakota Joshua really impress this coach that he's going to be a guy that you want to see around for a little bit? Curtis Lazar is locked up for 3 years at $1 million per. How much is he going to be an every night guy in this lineup? I'm curious to see, because we've heard Tocchet. We heard him in the post game against the Seattle Kraken. He called the team soft, right? He talked about all the holes that need to be fixed on this team. You saw the tweet from Jason Bruff, like game 2, like just not even knowing what to say and talking about consistency. And it's like, it's something we've seen this whole time. What do you expect Tocchet to change with? And he talked about some things today that I found were pretty interesting, was like changing the process and the culture and everything in the organization. He talked about management. He talked about the players. Like, he's kind of that guy to me that is the piece that moves management down to delivering a message to the players in the right way. And this makes sense because he's that guy, right? He's the coach and he's their guy from Pittsburgh. So he is the right guy to get the Pittsburgh message across to these players. How do you see him doing a good job this season? Like, if say we fast forward to the end of the year and like a legitimate possibility, like, listen, they win every game, they get into the playoffs. That'd be awesome. That'd be cool. That'd be fun, whatever. But what's actually one legitimate thing that you hope he can accomplish by the end of the year with Rick Tocchet?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's hard to nail it down to one thing. I'd say, actually, now that I think about it, it isn't. There's one thing he can do. I mean, he needs to do a lot more than just one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can find a way to make JT Miller viable as a legit top 6 center, get him back to the point where he's competent there, where he isn't a defensive liability, where he's still driving 70, 75 points at that pace. You get the 5-on-5 offense back. That would be huge for this team.
Right.
Because then all of a sudden, there's your in-house replacement for Bo. There's a huge weight off your shoulders, because, again, trying to find top 6 centers is like trying to find top pair defensemen. Good luck if you don't draft and develop them yourself. It's difficult. It's not easy. So that would be monumental. If you can create this culture of accountability, clean up these moments where you get the bad back check, fix the puck management, clean that up, get him back going to where he's a 70, 75 point guy even. I don't need him to be a 99, whatever he was last season. But if you can get JT Miller to be 80 to 90% of what he was last season, that would be a huge win for Tocchet. And I think that's a big reason why he was brought in, was because he's proven that he's had this relationship in the past with complicated personalities like Phil Kessel in the past. There were a lot of large personalities and egos to manage in Pittsburgh with the forwards, and Tocchet was responsible for a lot of that. Let's see how he manages with that, because I think this idea of getting the team to play with more structure, like better defensive habits, that's not so much X's and O's as it is mindset and philosophy. Because I've long held a theory that there aren't huge differences in the systems that teams employ.
Okay.
There are tweaks. There's difference in the sense of, okay, how much freedom and creativity do you want guys to have at the offensive blue line to make plays versus dump and chase, and you want to just cut turnovers?
Yeah.
How much pressure do you want to apply on the other team? How much do you want to chase the puck to force turnovers?
Where do you want
win
your
the puck
main
back
shooting area to be from? Like, there's a very different look from the Carolina Hurricanes to the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah. Do you prioritize shot volume or shot quality? There are these stylistic choices, but by and large, in the defensive zone, for example, there's a huge difference in there's a massive difference in the X's and O's of how you're going to defend in your own end. It's more about how you prioritize and talk it. Like, I asked this to Tocchet straight up, and he agreed that it's more mindset and philosophy. So outside of the Miller thing, then it's about, can you get guys to buy in to actually enjoying playing this style of hockey? Because they tried this under Travis Green, and I don't think the players enjoyed it. I don't think they were fully bought in, and it completely sapped any of their offensive creativity. So instilling that mindset while not completely killing the offensive creativity of the group, that's going to be one of the big tasks for Tocchet as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that I would like to see by the end of the year, is where the Canucks can go on a 5-game stretch where they go out and play like the same team for 5 games. I don't know if that's going to be something they can accomplish this season. There's so much work to do, whether it be the roster, whether it be, well, it kind of just feels like it's the roster, to be honest. Like, it feels like it's going to be the roster. That's why I really think, and we've talked about this so much in the show this year, it's more about the process than what you're actually seeing from the results. I think there was a comment in there as well from Dominic, said Tocchet was brought in to identify players to keep and build on the next seasons. He was not brought in to win or create structure. Kind of what you said. Like,
I agree,
there's going to be more structure, more accountability under him, I think.
The structure, like, again, because it comes down to accountability and sort of creating a different culture, that's part of the long-term process. Wins and losses, I agree, they don't matter. That's not what management's going to be grading Tocchet on. And I also agree with what the commenter said, that a big part of that is, okay, you're saying you want to play this more structured style, want to play with more discipline, want to play this particular style where you're playing responsible hockey. That part of that is seeing, okay, who buys in, and then based off who buys in, seeing, okay, who's part of the long-term solution. So I think we're actually on the same page, where it's not necessarily about, can we get our goals against way down over the balance of the season. I'm not necessarily worried a ton about that, because it is still mostly just about the long-term process. Plus, we want to see this team tank, and you know, the best case scenario would be, I think here's the best case scenario with Tocchet. He comes in, Miller looks like himself again. Peterson keeps producing. The young guys, Hoglander and Podkolzin, come up at some point. You start seeing development signs from them. And despite that, they still find ways to lose and keep hold where they are in the standings, and make sure that they don't ruin their draft stock.
Yeah, because listen, when Bo Horvat goes, that's a massive loss to this team that, yes, they've been able to put up a ton of goals. Who's leading the way? It's Bo Horvat.
Yeah.
As much as you want to say, and as much as we say that, you know, Peterson is the heartbeat of this team offensively, he is. But Horvat is putting up a ton of goals for your team at this point in the season. And I know a lot of that comes from the stuff on the power play and the tips and stuff and the situation that he's put in. But you got to give the dude credit. He's done a lot of goal production on his own as well. Or, you know, scoring chance creation, whatever you want to call it. He's done a lot of this on its own. We'll wrap up the show with the start of it. Something is fishy. Okay? We talked about this. Delaney Peterson sent down to the AHL minutes after they left the ice of him skating on the top line with Elias Patterson and Andrei Kuzmenko. Found it interesting because we were thinking, okay, so you send the player down to the AHL. Let's say Vegas Golden Knights, they put in a waiver claim. I wouldn't expect Lane Peterson to be able to play tonight for the Vancouver Canucks, as I am under the assumption he's sent down to the AHL. I've been proven incorrect. He can play for the Canucks tonight, which is wild, right? Like, am I the only one who thinks that's crazy, that like a team could have a claim in right now for Lane Peterson? He could be in the Vancouver Canucks lineup still tonight. I'm shocked. And it's happened before. I had to look it up. It was 2 years ago. Derek Ryan with the Calgary Flames was sent down in the morning, but played that night. Was waived in the morning. Yep, sorry. Waived in the morning, played in the night, went to the AHL the next day. And it's very possible that could be something. But you brought up Di Giuseppe, right? You got to explain this Di Giuseppe thing. That's really strange that I don't understand.
So if they just needed a roster spot, they could have just sent Di Giuseppe down, and he wouldn't have had to clear waivers because he hasn't spent 10 games or 30 days on the roster. So I don't know if it's just about a roster spot, but also I think it might just be as simple as, okay, if he wants to, like, before you can send a guy to the minors, he has to clear waivers first. Right. It's like he clears waivers and then you assign him to the minors. So he hasn't been assigned to Abbotsford yet. In Peterson's case, I just wonder if it's as simple as the Canucks are going to have this long bye and they're not going to play for a while. And maybe it's just a case of we want Peterson to keep playing, play some games in Abbotsford.
Yeah. So Abbotsford, if you look at it,
timing's odd, but
Abbotsford will end up playing on Wednesday, February 1st, Friday, February 3rd, and Saturday, February 4th before they go on their AHL All-Star break all the way up until the 10th. So you could get Peterson in for some games. They also have a game this Saturday, tomorrow, down in Tucson. I don't think he's playing tomorrow in Tucson, as I just saw him skating on the first line. They play on Sunday in Tucson as well. It's a weird situation. And then on top of it, we were told that we were going to speak with Patrick Allvin. Let me get this correct, because I did reread the email. A time to speak with Patrick Allvin was to be determined in the morning. So they said that in the morning they would decide of a time to talk to Patrick Allvin. They've decided to do it post-game. So we're going to hear from the general manager after the game today.
10 p.m. Friday night presser. Let's go.
It's, you know how we joke and we're like, the Canucks always do this. Normally it's Friday, 5 o'clock on a long weekend. They drop news. They're waiting until the last second possible on Friday.
They're hoping everybody's out on a Friday night.
But here's the other thing, and this frustrated a lot of people in the media today, was they are doing this at the exact same time where they're opening the room. So you have to pick and choose. Are you going in to talk to the player post-game, or are you going to talk to Patrick Allvin? Difficult spot to be put in.
True. But I mean, it's a game against Columbus.
Sure.
Like,
that's the thing. Nobody's well, that's the thing. Like, the players are getting a day off,
deal.
It feels like, from media. Like, we talked to them today. It's just here's the other thing. Okay. If we're talking to Patrick Allvin today, right? Which I thought we were going to do in the morning. What are we talking to him about? We're talking to him about Andrei Kuzmenko signing an extension. Why do we have to do it in the post game? Like, I'm fine with it. I'm going to be down at the rink anyways. I'm going to go talk to him anyway. I find it fishy. I think it's fishy that the fact that we have to wait till post game. It's a lot of hours until that 10 o'clock.
I don't know.
I'm just saying, like, if we get to tonight's game, warm up skate goes on there, and you don't see Bo Horvat, it's going to be an absolute firestorm online. I'm just saying. And that's the other thing, is like, we talked about this before too, was like, you probably should be sitting Horvat here pretty soon with all the stuff going on around him. Like, I know there was an argument on Donnie and Dolly today, and Dollywall's going off, but seeing him almost get hurt there in Seattle, it looked like too. Like,
here's the thing with
very risky, man.
Because I saw the same Donnie and Dolly clip. I understand Dolly's point that you're like, who sets a guy 5 weeks out from the trade deadline? But I think this game is unique because once you're through this, you've got 7 to 10 days off,
right?
Where you could plausibly get a deal done. Yeah.
Just for clarification with people, though, because like a lot of people are like, oh, the roster freeze that happens during Christmas. There's no roster freeze in the All-Star. It's just kind of, it's a little like frowned upon. I don't want to say, like, it's not, you don't see a lot of moves done in the All-Star break. It's more of a corporate, let's show our sponsors how cool it is. But like, I don't know, to me, like, it's fair game for the Canucks. They can make a trade.
It's a long window.
Yeah.
So for me, I just don't see the upside of playing him against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Even if there is only like a 5, like, okay, 5's really high. Even if there's like a 0.5% chance that he gets hurt. I mean, like, that's whatever return you get from Horvat is a huge part of the future of this franchise, of the rest of this decade. I wouldn't risk it if you think there's a chance there's any potential deal that you could get done before the Canucks play their next game. And look, if you're on the other side of the All-Star break and you don't have a deal done and you're still like 4 weeks out on from the trade deadline, I'm not saying you sit him
for
like
4 weeks.
For 4 weeks, right? Like, I'm just saying maybe sit him for this game. You see if you can get a deal done before you resume from the All-Star break. Yep. And if you can't, then okay, fine. Like, you keep maybe playing from another couple of weeks, and then close to the deadline, sit him again. I just don't see
when you're really close. Like, if they're really close, if they're really close right now, like we've heard a lot of people. I know Frank's been saying it for a while. He thinks the deal's going to get done before the All-Star break. So this would make sense that they're very close now if they're at that point. And I think a team would like to get Bo Horvat in there right now. And
we also saw Nyquist.
Yes, exactly.
Who's supposed to be a rental.
That's like,
from
if
Columbus,
you want to get
hurt.
Real tinfoil hat.
I don't know, man. It's just Canuck luck. It's just Canuck luck.
But what I was thinking was like, so they need that roster spot. They also need a guy who might be able to play tonight. No. It's a deal with the Blackhawks, or I mean the Blue Jackets, the Blue Jackets for sure.
Yeah.
All right, I think we'll wrap things up there. I feel like there was one more thing I wanted to mention. Anything else you want to mention before we get out of here? I do have the Betway. I know Alex is going to get in my ear in a second here. We got the Betway wrap up. I do have our word of the day. I don't think anybody got it today in the chat. Pretty good. 69 people watching right now. Nobody missed it. Ostracize.
Nobody got it or missed
Nobody
it?
got it. Yeah, not one of the 69 people missed it. No, it was.
I didn't catch it either. You said ostracize?
Yeah. It was good. You mentioned that you
shows me how much I pay attention. I saw the freaking word and still didn't pick it up.
No, you asked before. Like you said you didn't notice last week when I did.
Yeah, I just think I'm bad at paying attention to small details.
I like to think that you just think too highly of me and you think I just throw words like this
100%. That's
in
what
my day to day. That is not true. Let's get to our Betway wrap up and close out the weekend here. What do we got today? We got a Canucks game. Obviously, they're playing against the Blue Jackets. I got Kuzmenko, money man Andrei Kuzmenko, just got paid. He's about to find the back of the net tonight. You got Kuzmenko or Johnny Gaudreau to score a goal in tonight's game. -167 over there on Betway. $10 bet will return you 16 on that one. I got the Blue Jackets winning tonight. And over 6.5 total goals on the night between the two teams. And Elias Patterson being a goal scorer tonight. +750. $10 bet. That'll return you 85. I think we'll wrap it up there. I'm curious to see what happens over the next few hours here, if there's anything. Like, I'm hoping for something, man. I know Canucks fans are hoping for something. I especially am hoping for something. Appreciate everybody in the chat again.
We've had a lot, though. We've had a lot recently.
Well, that's the other thing. But it's like, don't give us the tea.
It's fine. We can wait.
Yeah, but it's like I'm getting the tea without the honey and the cream. I'm just getting basic tea here of all this. AHL sent down, reassigned. They just want Lane Pearson. Give me the sugar. Give me the sugar, man. I want that. I want the trades. Let's get it going here. Give us a week off here to chat about it.
Just give everyone a week off to forget about the Canucks.
And speaking of a week off, we're off next week. You're off next week. You don't have to be here on Friday. We're going to be doing one show on Wednesday. We're going to be joined by Scott Rintoul, who's got a series dropping, the West Coast Express podcast series. He was telling me about it. It's a long one. I don't want to spoil it, but I know it's multiple parts. It is a very long podcast series. We're going to be joined by Scotty Rintoul. Everybody knows Scotty in Vancouver. So we're going to be joined by Scotty on Wednesday. He's going to chat with us. That's going to be our only show of the week. Next week, we're kind of taking the All-Star break to take a week off and relax because there's been a lot going on in this team for a little while here. And Quads maybe needs a couple extra days off to get his voice.
He always needs a couple of days off.
Yeah, he always gets a couple days off too. I wish. But yeah, we'll continue the coverage. Check everything out on Canucks Army. I'll still be writing a ton over there. During the All-Star break as well, I'll be dropping my new updated top 10 prospects list, which I'm excited about. Not going to tease it too much, but I will tell you this. Jonathan Lekaramaki is not number one on my list.
You already teased it.
All right, teased
that's
it right
the
there.
big. Why would you tease that?
Because that's a tease.
That's like the only you got like 3 prospects that matter. I mean,
the top 10 prospects list is
next year it's going to be like a top 2 prospects list.
Yeah, we'll go down to top 5 here pretty soon. We'll see what happens. Anyways, thanks everyone in the chat. It was a great week. We set some records this week for people tuning in on YouTube. That was great. Also, our average has just been incredible. The podcast numbers are going up. I've seen 25% rise in the podcast numbers over the past week. So really good stuff. Appreciate everybody listening there, tuning in here on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast, come by the YouTube. We're here Monday to Friday, except for next week from 1 o'clock to 1:45 every single day. And we can't wait to get back into the swing of things after a little bit of a hopefully slow week next week. But make sure to follow on Canucks Army. Alex, great job producing again today. Alex Lard, give us some love in the chat. I know they love Alex in the chat. We'll wrap it up there. On that note, for Harmon Dial, my name's Chris Faber. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Canucks Conversation. Wrap it up. Long weekend.